Okay, it looks like we're live. So we'll just wait a few moments here to give our viewers a chance to see the notification and to join us here for today's live stream, which is part of the Siena Art Institute's ongoing series of artist talks, StARTers Live. Every Tuesday this month, we're speaking with international creative professionals about the topics of accessibility and inclusion in art and design. And today we are speaking with Vassiliki Spachou, who is not only here with us for the live stream today, but she's also here in person at the Siena Art Institute as one of our artists in residence. So we're just in two separate rooms along the corridor here at the Siena Art Institute so we can have our masks off during the broadcast today. But it's great to have you with us here, Vicky.
Thank you so much. It's so exciting to be here.
So maybe as we're just waiting for some more viewers to join us, I can briefly introduce today's speaker. Vassiliki Spachou is a dance artist and educator whose work extends from choreography to educational and access programs, multisensory experiences, and projects of community engagement. Fascinated with nature observation, somatic inquiries, visual art, cultural and everyday rituals, she's interested in developing practices that foster collective healing and inspire new ways of observation, creation, and learning. Her recent work includes video pieces, photos, digital sketches, and site-specific movement interventions. She studied dance at the Greek State School of Dance and the Raluunanu Professional Dance School and earned a BA in Conservation of Antiquities and Works of Art. Recently, she was awarded a Fulbright scholarship to conduct research in choreography, somatic, and museum practices in New York. During her grants period, she collaborated with the Museum of Arts and Design, leading a movement workshop that was based on the exhibition 45 Stories in Jewelry. Since 2015, she has been collaborating with the Benaki Museum in Athens for educational programs that use movement as a tool for art interpretation. And she has contributed to a series of access programs for visitors with visual impairments. She has developed Dance in the Museum, a program that allows participants to express themselves physically and interact with key pieces from the Benaki collections. As a performer, she has participated in art projects and dance performances for Chantier d'Europe, the Dance à l'Argile competition, the Théâtre de la Ville Paris, the Neon organization, the Onassis Cultural Center, the Arc for Dance Festival, the Benaki Museum, of course, and the European Dance House Network and other institutions. So as our viewers are joining us here in the live stream today, let me first welcome you all to today's talk. Thank you all for joining us. And we also welcome you to leave comments or questions in the comment section, which we'll be able to see and respond to those questions during today's live stream. So now let's turn our attention to Vicky.
Thank you so much, Lisa, for the introduction. And thank you, and Miriam, for having me here. It's so exciting, and also to the people of your community and faculty, of course, that are here, and we can interact as much as we can. It's so valuable. So yeah, let's go on and get started with today's presentation. That it's gonna be about dance in relation to accessibility, and I will share now in full screen the presentation. I hope you can see that.
Yes, it's coming in. It looks great.
Okay, great. So yeah, mostly I will talk about works that have to do with the museum, because they are within a museum environment. And let me here just mention that my relationship with museums goes back when I was a kid attending museum programs, and then later as a student in conservation of works of art when I did my thesis and my internship in the Benaki Museum, where later I collaborated with for dance projects as a choreographer and dance artist. So even from early years, my work had to do with the visual arts in relation with dance, of course. And a short example of this, before I move on to accessibility projects, is this one. It's called Beyond Sleep, and it's about where I explored basically the vocabulary of the resting body, and I initiated the, let's say, the work's research from by observing by looking at how artists, visual artists, have depicted resting bodies, female resting or sleeping bodies, and later juxtaposing this with what femininity means nowadays, and with also how our mind works in this time in between consciousness and dreams. So anyway, this is one of the first projects that I related visual arts with choreography in my mind. And let's move on to a recent project that happened in the Museum of Arts and Design. It took place in New York City, where the museum is, and where I was as a Fulbright researcher over the last year. And it's a project that was designed for people with visual impairments. But then, of course, because due to it happened online because of COVID restrictions, so we could also, invite whoever wanted to participate. And it was called Jewelry Through Movement. It had to do with the exhibition 45 Stories in Jewelry. This was an exhibition that consisted of pieces that the artists that had made them were more interested about the conceptual aspects of their works and their the performative potential, let's say, of their works. So this was about movement experimentation, of course. And what I focused on here was the skin, actually, the idea of skin and how we could collect every information we can through our skin, through our surface. And by trying to pay attention in details. For example, if you try now to pay attention in the temperature of the room, in where your clothes touches your body, where your clothes touch your body. So this kind of information and everything that you collect through your skin. And we later played with verbal description, which I think is a very magical tool, let's say, because you can actually choreograph imagination. And you can choose where the attention you want to go, or the focus. And here I have a small example, a short example of this. So imagine that your wrist is surrounded by a cold aluminum disc in the shape of a UFO. It is light, wide, and sleek. It is designed with mathematical precision, clear lines, no flaw. it feels smooth on your skin, it shines, and so on. So you can provide information about shape, quality, things that interest you, and of course, as I was discussing also with a friend of mine, Yael Palumpis, that lives in New York, and she's becoming an expert in verbal description. Verbal description is for everyone, actually. It's also for sighted people because we miss too much when we're looking at something. And here we can see an art object, another jewelry piece. It's another version of the brooch as we know it. We know it as a miniature. This is a version of it where Otto Künzli, the artist, created it from a rubber band and two hooks, one on each side, in order to evoke playfulness and a performance, maybe. And so he tried to connect different points on his body or in between two bodies in order to take pictures and photos of that and create a performative thing. Here I experiment with this idea on the right. And the game I tried to do with this, to make with this idea, was to make some restrictions in order for the visitors to produce movement material that would be of a certain kind of movement material. And that's how choreographers and performers also work in order to create movement material. And then we can go to another program. It's called Dance in the Museum, which I design and lead in the Benaki in Athens, along with the support of the educational programs. And here, this one is not an accessibility-oriented program, but it is, we are at least very interested in inclusion in terms of different bodies or different abilities. And this is, of course, again, for movement in the museum. And each program is taking place in different parts of the museum, and when the museum is closed for the audience, for the general audience, I mean. So we have the place to move, the space to move. And it is consisted of two parts. One is more theoretical. We have discussions. We can compare and contrast or find the similarities between the way our visual artists and choreographers work, and then continue and create in the galleries and express in the galleries. And somatic practices also interests me very much in these programs because they evoke, they emphasize a more internal physical perception, and I think they help people to understand more and be more clear in what their how their body works, and about their choices in movement. Here we have we're in the Museum of Islamic Art, and we have worked with the motifs and the patterns existing in this in the Arabesque art. And after the workshop, we're relaxing here after near the water fountain of 17th century Cairo mansion. Here is another program in the same in Dance in the Museum, where we play with notions like geometry, clarity, discipline, organization of the space, that Yannis Morales, the painter that is exhibited here in this retrospective exhibition, is working with. And we're interested to see how these notions are what these notions mean for our body, and for the way we compose kinetic material. Here again, from the same workshop, we try to make choreographic scores out of the patterns of Morales, and we present them in the end. And this is a project. It's a part of a museum guided tour. It's called After Titsa, and here with Christiana Kosiari, we're making a three-dimensional version of a sculpture, a moving sculpture, let's say. Three-dimensional in the way that the audience can have the experience of looking at the sculpture from different angles. And it is about the work of a Greek sculptress named Titsa. That's why this title. And so the audience hopefully can create a narration in their head about her female figures. And here we can see a small extract. And we can continue in the sensory garden. We co-designed this project with Fotis Flovatomos as a part of the Sing with the Senses program that he's leading in the Penaki. And it takes place in the Athens National Garden. And here we try to prepare the visitors, the participants, prepare their bodies, wake up their senses in order to enjoy and focus on tactile, olfactory, and auditory stimuli that would follow in the garden. Another project that is this multisensory and multidisciplinary, because we worked with different artists from different backgrounds, For example, there was a writer, visual artists, actors, another dancer, and many volunteers. Here you can see moments from rehearsals with Marina Piñator that we're trying to make a piece about the hands in El Greco paintings. This is how we tried to make it accessible with sound elements. For example, with audio description that would provide a description about our movements, movement instructions for the audience to be able to move in detail, with simple movements, but in detailed movements, and to be able to feel how the bodies are depicted in what postures, what gestures in El Greco's paintings. Through voice, of course, and through our breathing, we were trying to make an atmosphere that would look like this era of El Greco's era, and the soundscape or costumes that evoke sound, for example, materials that we would use inside of our costumes that when crumbled, they make a sound that people could trace us in space. School programs. Here we are again at the Giga Gallery, and this is a program for students of the high school, and it is about the Greek modern history, the poets, people of culture and literature, and it was also combined with movement-related examples and activities. Another workshop for teachers now here, in order to work with their students with movement. And this is one of the last projects that it took place again in New York and Queens. Here we saw embroidering which is a movement that is repetitive and meditative. We saw it as a movement to make you concentrate in yourself, but also you can interact with people of your community. And in order to design a very personal space, a bed curtain, because the theme was dueling, and this is what we respond to. And it's a hands-on participatory experience that the participants were inspired by the surrounding view of Manhattan and Queens. And here I will end with a collage of some pictures from moments of events and programs that I had the chance to see during my stay in New York. So there's a big variety of accessibility programs. Here in the middle, on the center, you can see people lying or people sitting upside down in order to see art. We were invited to do that in MoMA in order to see art in from different angles and play somatically. In your right, you can see up in the first row, you can see another photo of the Axis Dance Company, which it was a training for dance inclusion for diverse bodies. And in the right corner in the bottom, you can see some drawing sketches from tape. They are from Pamela Lawton's workshop in Chaim Gross Foundation. And let me wrap this up here in case we have some questions. So this is my contact information. And I don't know how we are.
Yes, we're doing
with
good.
time.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing this overview of such an interesting array of projects that you've worked on. And there have been some really nice comments that have come in. For example, Pamela Lawton, who was actually one of our presenters a few weeks back, wrote that it's interesting to think about the relationship between performer-audience versus interactive performances where the audience would be more with the choreographers. So it seems like you gave us some examples of both of these different types of projects that you've worked on.
Yes, thank you, Pamela, for the comment.
And in terms of the audiences or the groups that you work with, I'm curious, do some of them come with prior experience of either visiting the museum, visiting the botanical gardens previously, or is this their first time in that space? And also, are movement activities something that they're familiar with or something that is a new experience for the groups that you work with?
Well, it depends every time because participants are really mixed. We have participants that are dancers or performers themselves, or participants that do not have really a big experience in this field or in dancing. But it is that's not a one helps the others, and also it's an experience that we all have individually and in a group. So yeah, that's great. I don't remember your first question though.
Oh, sure. No, I think you did a great job sort of talking about the groups that you work with. And in fact, there was another question that just came in from Miriam, who is asking, when you work with low vision individuals, are you usually working with mixed groups, participants with all kinds of different abilities?
Yeah, I've worked mostly with people with visual impairments. But I had a training for people with diverse bodies. So yeah, I haven't worked in this yet.
Mm-hmm. And so, for example, when you did the visit to the botanical gardens, I imagine there was a range of people who had no vision or low vision, for example, for the botanical garden visit.
Yeah, actually, there was a group because most of the times the groups are either from people that has visual impairment or not. I mean, it's a different design when you design. Although I believe that this kind of programs and every artistic interpretation is for everyone because everyone have different needs and each one of us can be engaged to the surrounding world in their own ways. Yeah.
Oh, that's really true. And just so interesting to see how you've responded to different contexts from this, for example, the embroidery in New York with to think of embroidery as a movement is just so fascinating to think about. There was a question that came in from Jeff earlier in your presentation, who is asking more generally, how important do you think it is for visual art to push beyond the visual?
To push beyond the visual. Yeah, that's interesting. I believe every art right now is pushing beyond, even dance, because sometimes you go to a dance performance and you realize it's not exactly dance. Maybe it's about talking or it's about something else. As I said with verbal description, some people choreograph imagination or play with other things. So, yeah, I think this is the time that we, from all the arts, we're playing with and experiment with beyond.
Oh, absolutely. There was another question that came in from Miriam, who was asking if you could maybe give a little bit more detail about how the interaction with the Benaki collections was organized. And she's also interested to know a bit more about the game that you worked on with the string and the different parts of the body. If you could say a bit more about that.
In this game, during this game, I tried to, have some instructions, direct instructions, like in which body parts to connect. So little by little, we would play with a vocabulary that was a common base, and you could then play with your whole body and make a very specific vocabulary of movements. So that's a way that choreographers work or dancers work when they create material. That was what interested me.
And a follow-up question, did that involve music as well in those Benaki body workshops?
Yeah, a lot of times we involve music that is combined with the era that we're focusing on.
That really makes
so
sense.
Yes.
And there was a nice comment that came in regarding your interaction with the jewelry pieces from actually our silversmithing instructor, Laura, who was just saying that it was very interesting to make gioielli viventi, so to make sort of living jewelry, you could say. So she found that really interesting.
So yes, I found that really interesting too, to see that also jewelers and artists that work with contemporary jewelry, also go into conceptual art, and they play with what jewelry is.
Yes, in so many different ways. So, yes. Well, this has been really a wonderful food for thought and such a diverse range of projects that you've shared with us. So I think in the interest of time, we probably should wrap up for now. But it's really been a pleasure to talk with you and to get a glimpse into such a wide variety of projects that you've been pursuing. And thank you so much to our viewers for your wonderful questions and comments. And I also want to make sure to also thank the Stavros Niarchos Foundation, who is sponsoring the residencies for our Greek artists this month. So we're very grateful for their support as well. I'll mention to our viewers that we have more talks coming up in our series focusing on themes of accessibility and inclusion in art and design. So our presentation coming up next week online on Tuesday, March 23rd. We'll actually be in Italian, not in English. We'll be speaking to Elena Arpaccio from Spain. And then the following week on Tuesday, March 30th, we'll have another English language presentation from Tom Bieling, who will be connecting with us from Germany. So we hope that you can all join us for those upcoming talks too. So thank you again to our viewers. And of course, thank you very much to Vicky for taking the time to speak with us today.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much.
All right. So we'll see you all very soon.
Goodbye, everyone.
Ciao. Ciao.
Ciao.